Hello, welcome to this screencast where I want to give an update on the launcher exploration that we did 6 years ago. At the time, we wanted to have a way to combine a solid pod with solid apps, and to allow an app to have access to some folder on your pod, you have to edit the ACLs on your pod. So we thought it'd be necessary to have some sort of admin app or launcher app that knows which apps you want to use and that edits these ACLs for you. Now, we built a version of this in the apps team at Inrupt at the time that used WAC, Web Access Control. And recently I wanted to update this app, and I found that with the current solid spec, since it uses either WAC or ACP combined with solid OIDC, where there's a consent dialog as part of the OIDC flow. If you use WAC there, then there's no way to say which app should have access to a certain folder. There's a way to say which origin should have access. And if you combine that with WebID TLS, which is what we used before OIDC, then that amounts to a restriction on apps, because an app that runs in your browser gets to use your client-side cert, and there's no way around that through a proxy. Your browser safeguards those keys, and the origin check would apply onto those client-side certs. But with OIDC, any app on the web could represent you with your full control. So the other option is to use ACP, which does have client identifiers. So I learned ACP. It was less scary than I thought. It's actually quite simple. And I used CSS with ACP support to try this out. Now, the app I wanted to launch was Poddit, and it turned out that Poddit was also hadn't been updated much in the last 6 years, so it used a client library, the Solid Auth Fetcher, or the Solid Client at the time, which doesn't support the current version of CSS. So I had to port Poddit to the latest Solid Client Auth in JS, which meant I needed to port it to latest React. So I did pretty much a rewrite of at least the framing of the code of Poddit, removing some dependencies. So now on poddit.app, which is a domain name we registered at the time, we don't even remember who. I think it's owned by Inrupt, and it's deployed through 5apps. There is now an updated version of Poddit, and it is compatible with CSS, which is compatible with ACP. So I have made some edits to my ACRs. If you look at the root ACR, then normally this is what a standard default pod root ACR looks like, except that I added this line. Normally any app would have access to your this full owner control, full owner access, read, write, control would be any client, but I added a client identifier saying only my launcher app, which I host on Solid upon the source, will have this access. And this means that I could avoid this scary, sorry for the noisy carts riding by, I don't know if you hear those in the recording, in the scary dialogue that we now have on Pivot. This one, it says, OIDC feels almost like you're logging in, right? Or you're doing an OAuth flow, but it's actually getting full access to your account to read and write all your data on your behalf. And instead, on this Pivot server, we have a different dialogue. An application wants to know your web ID, which is much more friendly, because actually it's not gaining that full owner access because I restricted that to just my launcher app. So this OADC flow now becomes actually pretty harmless and usable, unless somebody else on their pod gives me access to things that this app shouldn't see. But at least for the ones on my pod, like this specific authorization, there's no access to that through OIDC. But if I authorize it, it's still, you can see, it's able to read the public type index, but it's not able to fetch the bookmarks. I wanted to show you that. You see here, this is a 403 on bookmarks.ttl, and that's because I haven't installed this app yet in my launcher app. So now I go to the Solid App Launcher. This is the only app that actually gets the full owner access, and I connect it. Actually, here the dialog should say it's getting full access. No, wait. It is actually correct. At this point, it wants to know my web ID. It already has full access with its client ID, but I'm not changing that by clicking this button. So that's why this dialog is correct here. So I've already, like when I set up my pod, I picked, use the launcher app from Pondosaurus. So now I'm seeing here, there's a list of bookmark apps, and I can install Poddit. And then once I've done that, I can launch Poddit. And now you can see it can access the bookmarks. But what it did in between is, if I look at the ACRs on my pod, for instance, this one, you see here that, where is it? The policy, it lists the launcher as well as Poddit. So if I remove Poddit again from the list, go back to the launcher, it will show the prompts to install again. So we can actually see what it's doing here in the network tab when we install. It's doing I think this is the put. Yeah, this is the put request. So here it's adding itself. And see, even Vim told me. So I can load file, and you see it's added itself again. And so now Poddit has gotten access to this bookmark, which is, of course, if you look at, where is my type index? Public type index. If you look at my type index here, it says that bookmarks.ttl is an instance of a bookmarks document, and so that's how the launcher knows. It checks like, hey, what are all these ACRs? What are the matches in there? It's checking the ACR for this document and also for that folder. So starting from your web ID, it will go to your two type indexes and find all your bookmarks related instances, and then edit the ACR files for all the files that contain bookmarks. And then after that, you can actually launch a bookmarking app, and it will get access to your bookmarks, but not to the rest of your data. And that's the thing that we didn't have for the past 6 years, but now we finally got this working again with the Solid spec. Thank you.